God, what's on my to-do list? I've already done a video on this thing. These aren't cool enough to do a video on yet. Can't really kill them with kindness today, can I? I guess I can't put it off. Time to talk about the N-23. So, been promising this for a while, finally delivering on it. This is a complete tour of my Shorty AR. We're going to start with the muzzle and with the butt. This is going to contain a lot of redundant information for people who already know kind of how an AR works, but I'm going to try to explain at least my methodology for building this thing and give you some info on how an AR actually should or is supposed to work for, my audience who isn't in the US. So we're going to start at the muzzle here. This is modeled after a flash hider. It's kind of like this guy. It's like an A2 style flash hider. But it does the exact opposite. So it has these baffles in it. You can kind of see, these ramped sections here. And what that ends up doing is the complete opposite of what a flash hider should do. It increases the flash. So if you've seen any of my videos with this thing, it's always belching fire. That's specifically because of this guy. With ARs though, you can throw any kind of muzzle device you want on it. It's very open-ended, very modular platform. We can have things like this, which is a linear compensator, vents all the gas out the front, so it just out the front. Again, you can have a flash hider that, this one is more of a recoil compensator because the bottom is solid, but so it vents gas out the top. You can have a muzzle brake that throws a lot of weight at the end. With this one specifically, it's a cookie cutter, but it vents a ton of gas out the side, so it reduces kind of like your recoil impulse. I've noticed that those don't particularly have much of an effect on this, aside from just making it look goofy. Or you can have something like this, which is a suppressor hub. Also, it's a muzzle brake with the big chambers coming out the side. All right, next up on the list is the front sight block. This is for military purposes, or for military rifles. This is both your gas port, or gas where you vent gas out the barrel into this gas block, which then shoves it into the receiver and then makes the whole thing cycle. There's a number of different ways to actually go about doing this. The military opted to integrate it with the front sight assembly, which, gets two birds stoned. For other civilian purposes, you can go with a low profile gas block. Does the same thing. It taps. There's a little hole in here. It taps gas from the expended cartridge, and it just shoves gas into the receiver and unlocks the bolt and makes everything run all nice. With this one, I mentioned it in my last video with this rifle. This handguard is a cut-down carbine handguard, which kind of looks like this, before you mangle it. And I'm a big fan of not measuring once or cutting, or just, I just go with my gut. I go with my gut. So I accidentally made this just a skosh too long. It's maybe about 1 millimeter or two too long. So when I put the gas block on, which by the way, it's a threaded in, it uses set screws to thread in instead of, with the military style, generally you bore these channels through the actual barrel, and then you have these taper pins that you hammer in, make sure the block can't go anywhere. This, I didn't want to screw up this barrel too much, so I just opted with this. Anyway, so with the leaving a little bit too much material on the handguard, that means that this was kind of out of alignment with the actual gas port. So I went in with a drill and bored out a little angular channel into the gas block. And you've seen the video, it works. It's probably not my best work, but, you know, it works. Handguard. So this is a clamshell style handguard. There's a ring back here that is just under a ridiculous amount of spring tension. This is called like a delta ring assembly. It basically holds the back end, so it holds this portion of the handguard onto the barrel, and then there's another ring assembly up here which holds the front portion of the handguard onto the barrel. This was, I mean, it's not an ideal setup for a rifle like this. It works for a military rifle, but civilian rifles generally in the past 20 years we've gone to something more like this, which is a free-floated handguard or free-floated barrel. The idea is that you only want really one point of contact, so that if there's any other pressure put on the handguard, it's not going to deflect your barrel and possibly throw off your shots. With something like this, you're not going to deflect like that much of steel. The barrel itself is a ballistic. Oh, geez, what is it called? Ballistic Advantage, my bad. It's a Ballistic Advantage 7.5-inch barrel. It's button rifled. They're cheap. They work. They work fine. All right, moving on to the actual receiver section. As I mentioned in the last video, this is an A1 style handguard. You can tell because this back portion of the rear aperture for the rear sight is kind of all one integrated piece, like into the handguard, or not into the handguard, into the carrying handle. And that's distinctly different from something like an A2 style, which is this. This is a takeoff carrying handle from like a USGI rifle. That has its own integrated, or not even integrated, but it has its own separate rear aperture device unit. And the idea with this is that you can actually calibrate it for drop at distance. So you can kind of, you zero this thing at, I can't remember right now, but you zero this thing at a certain distance, and then you can use this little dial indicator to go like, hey, I've zeroed it for 300. I can pop this up to 400. You're still going to be on zero, right? So with ARs just in general, we've kind of gone to preferring a flat top style receiver, kind of like this, that has like an integrated Picatinny rail on the top. Obviously, this has no Picatinny rail, which is kind of like a universal attachment system. So there's a couple of ways to actually mount optics to this thing. So, I mean, there's this. This is a gooseneck mount. It's clamped through a hole that's like right here, and this allows you to throw an optic, you know, at the end of it. This was made by Aimpoint. These things are surplused out. You can find, they're everywhere. You can find them. What the Army did, like Vietnam era, was they would actually get optics kind of like this. It's like a 4X scope, same thing. It goes through the little hole, pop it on, bam, you have a little bit of range, or a little bit of way to, you know, go out and touch something. All right, so let's take this guy apart and actually get into the receiver. You're going to notice that the spring and buffer is immediately going to pop out. That's because I generally don't run the detents, these guys, that hold the buffer and spring in on, especially like a rifle like this. I don't know how harshly this thing is gassed. And these things, if you're over-gassed or if you're running just the absolute piss out of the rifle, these things will snap and cause weird malfunctions. So I get around that by just not putting them in. Also, it spooks me every time I open up my rifle, or pistol, because, yeah, there we go. Because this guy immediately shoots out. All right, I know somebody was asking me in one of the videos what kind of spring and buffer this is. This is a standard carbine buffer and a standard carbine length spring. Mind you, when I was dialing this thing in, I went through a bunch of different springs. I mean, I tried this guy, which is a braided spring. I've tried this, which is a rifle length spring. You know what? I even tried several flavors of carbine springs. I even tried this guy, which is a flat spring. It gives you a little bit more oomph. And then I've tried different buffers. I've got like this hydraulic buffer. I have one of the all-in-one buffer systems. And what turned out to work, I mean, this worked fine, but what turned out to be just the most practical was a standard like H2, which is the measure of weight. There's like H1, H2, H3 buffer, and with a standard carbine buffer spring. It's really that dead simple. Okay, so lower receiver, get into this real quick. This has a two-stage trigger in it. I can't tell you who actually manufactured this trigger. I got it. If you see that box, like that monthly subscription box called Tac Pack, I got it out of a Tac Pack box. Basically, the idea behind a two-stage trigger is that you have a little bit of take up here, and you hit a wall, so you hit resistance, and then your hammer will actually fall. Some people prefer them. I really don't care. It was a trigger that didn't have a home, and I put it in this receiver. Low receiver. This is probably the one thing I really don't like about this build that I will be replacing at some point. This is an Anderson manufacturing receiver. I built this during the COVID lockdowns. You can really tell because this and like plastic Omni receivers like this were like the only things you could get during that time, and they were ungodly expensive, and I was really bored and I wanted to build something, so I opted to go with this piece of crap. It has no winter trigger guard. So like with a regular AR, you'll have something like this. There's like a little detent here. The whole trigger guard will pivot down, and you can use it with gloves on or whatever. This is, I guess, simplicity of manufacturing or something. Yeah. The safety selector is, it's ambidextrous, which wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for a military rifle, but I like the fact that I can, with my shooting hand, I can pop this to fire and then click it down to safe, like fire safe, fire safe. But yeah, this has a two-stage trigger on it, and to kind of like differentiate it, this here is like a single stage, like a really nice single stage trigger. So basically, the difference is this has no wall. It is already, well, like it's basically already on the wall. There's no take up, and yeah. So either you want a wall, a little bit of take up, and then you hit, or just you're on it to just go. All right, upper receiver time. Standard military charging handle. Nothing really fancy about this. Bolt carrier group is from a company called Fail Zero. This is a nickel boron coated bolt carrier group. I've heard mixed results or mixed opinions about specifically this company. Some people say like the gas key up here isn't torqued, or they stake this thing and torque it to spec after this thing is coated, and these pins kind of, or the screws can kind of waller out, and then the gas key can get loose, and then the rifle just doesn't function right. But the idea behind this is like it's a very slick coating, and it's very hard coating. So basically, with a normal bolt carrier group, you get something like this, which would have like a phosphate coating on it. And a phosphate coating is very durable. Like it prevents the material from actually rusting or degrading, but it has a bit of grit to it. Well, not really grit, but like you can feel it's not very slick. So you got to keep these things nice and oiled up. Whereas this, just the coating itself provides a deal of lubricity. So, I run with this. The original like prototypes of the N-23 had a like a chrome bolt carrier group. This one kind of has that same vibe. I mean, it's not chrome, but you know, it looks about right. So, try to get the cotter pin out. I can never, you know what? I've taken these stupid things apart so many times, and I always find new and interesting ways to like break or lose these stupid things. Anyway, so cotter pin comes out. Cotter pin holds your firing pin in. Your firing pin holds your cam lug in, and the cam lug holds the actual bolt in. So basically, when it's traveling back in the rifle, the cam, there's a little surface here that like will force the cam to rotate and will force the bolt head to actually lock in, and it locks into the barrel extension out here. So there's matching lugs. And then that locks up your rifle. And then, like I said before, with the gas tube kind of goes into this guy. When it taps gas off the barrel, it hits, goes into the gas key. There are gas rings here that'll help the actual piston action. But like, yeah, it just blows gas, and then this thing reciprocates. All right, so I don't know. What do you guys think? I really enjoy the build. There's a couple things I really do want to change. Chief of which is definitely the receiver. Eventually, I might SBR it so I don't have to use this. I mean, this brace here is made by Palmetto. It really has the vibe of the old style AR. Or the CAR-15 stocks, but it's, you know, it's legally a brace, so this is legally a pistol. Have I forgotten anything? Maybe the grip. This is an A2 style grip. Notable, the A2, you can tell them apart from the A1 style because it has this little finger nubbin right here, and there's no like there's a sling loop thing on the grip, kind of like this guy up here. They ended up changing it to this style for whatever reason. I think I mentioned this in the video, or the last video, but this is a slick side receiver, meaning that there's no forward assist. And basically what a forward assist is this little guy right here. So you can pop it in. There's teeth kind of milled into the bolt carrier group. You can see it right here. And what that forward assist does is, if this doesn't go into battery, these little teeth, there's a finger on there that can push this thing into battery. Is it useful? Not really. If your rifle is so damn wallered out or corroded or whatever that like you can't actually get it into battery, you're probably doing more damage than, you know, you're probably doing more bad to it than good. But I mean, if you need to pop off a round right then you know, circumstances dictate, right? So yeah, hope you enjoyed the complete teardown. If you got any questions as to like specifically what products or what, you know, components I've used, I can try to figure out what this trigger is. Everything else is mostly just spare parts that I had, like the mag catch, the pins, just everything was just parts I've had, you know, spare floating around. You can see from the video, I've just got parts and parts. Really, the only thing super special that, you know, I had to track down was the upper receiver. I got this from Brownells. They make a kind of like a vintage line. I know Palmetto started with their, they brought back the H&R, Harrington Richardson company as part of, you know, their group, but, and they make upper receivers like this. But yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll get more comfortable with doing videos here at the bench, and I'll be doing a bit more teardowns. Later, y'all.